And now we're going to go to the BC Diabetes Foundation and Dr. Elliott, please.
Good afternoon, committee members. I'm Dr. Tom Elliott, Vancouver-based diabetes specialist, UBC Associate Professor, and today Chair of the BC Diabetes Foundation. 4 million Canadians live with diabetes and the dread of death or disability from heart attack, stroke, blindness, amputation, and of passing out with low sugar at meetings like this. Together, we have the means to change those 4 million lives. Doctors and diabetes educators have the knowledge but lack the tools. Committee members, give us the tools and we'll finish the job. National Pharmacare, as it stands, will cover most diabetes medicines, and this will be a big win. But there is one omission and 2 might be covered items that I'd like to bring to your attention today. The Ozempic class of diabetic weight loss drugs has been omitted. 2/3 of the 7% of Canadians who live with type 2 diabetes are overweight. Overweight is not the cause of diabetes, but it is a contributor. Lifestyle therapy always comes first. Indeed, all overweight type 2 people living with diabetes try to lose weight and keep it off, but most fail. Ozempic is a difference maker. My clients think of Ozempic as a miraculous therapy, and so do I, yet it has been specifically blacklisted from National Pharmacare. I consider this to be driven by a fat-shaming lobby, to be discriminatory and un-Canadian. My obese clients do not choose to be obese. They deserve access to Ozempic, but fewer than half of them can afford it. Drug costs are a major consideration. In March 2023, the Canada.ca website had the following post. Canadian drug prices are the 3rd highest among OECD countries and 25% above the OECD median. Yesterday, I calculated the cost for a month's supply of Ozempic. In Canada, $218, while in Germany, only $82, almost 1/3. Now, let's talk about type 1 diabetes. 300,000 Canadians live with it. Onset is at age less than 30, and there's no cure yet. It carries a colossal burden, demanding 4 to 5 shots of insulin and 10 finger pokes per day, as well as tight regulation of food and exercise. This brings me to the 2 devices that might be covered by National Pharmacare. These are CGM, or continuous glucose meters, $8 a day, and an insulin pump, $10 a day. When these 2 are combined with a smartphone app, they provide for automated insulin delivery, or AID. Both of these devices need Pharmacare inclusion. AID is a technological cure for type 1 diabetes. Put simply, AID keeps the sugar steady, just like cruise control keeps the speed steady while driving a car. I'd now like to invite Ramya Hosak, who lives with type 1 diabetes and who sits on the foundation's board with me, to relate her first-hand experience. Ramya, over to you.
Thank you, Tom. I've lived with type 1 diabetes for 17 years, and as the founder of Young and T1, also represent a group of 750 young people living with type 1 diabetes in BC. Despite this network, I've struggled physically over the years. In 2016, my husband came home from work to find me unconscious and non-responsive after a night of extreme illness, vomiting, dehydration, and progressively increasing blood sugars. I was shocked to wake up in the hospital the next morning and learn that I had almost died. Before automated insulin delivery, or AID, diabetes was my 24/7 second job. The mental health impact and burden of balancing high and low blood sugars was consuming. I'd become afraid to sleep when I was sick for fear of a repeat incident to 2016. When my husband started a job with an extended healthcare plan covering an AID system last year, I got one right away. I couldn't believe the instantaneous difference in my quality of life. Not for the first time in 17 years, I was able to sleep through the night and woke up each day with my blood sugar in range. With an A1C now deemed perfect by my endocrinologist, I've stopped worrying about diabetes complications. My family physician, amazed at my blood work and overall physical health, gave me the go-ahead recently to start trying for my own children. I'm now able to live almost like someone has found a cure for diabetes. To think of having to go off this system should our employment status change is terrifying, and to know that there are others out there that could benefit from this but who can't afford it is heartbreaking. Thank you. Merci for your time.
Okay, so members, witnesses, we are back. This is panel 3, and we thank you for coming before the Finance Committee. We have with us today the Associate Professor of Economics and Philosophy at Carleton University. That's Professor Vivek Deheja. Welcome back to our committee. Also with us today from the DC Diabetes Foundation, we have BC, and I had DC here, but it says BC, yes, Diabetes Foundation. We have Dr. Tom Elliott, who's joining us, as well as Miss Ramya Hosak will also be joining us.
Foundation from British Columbia. So basically what you're calling for is under the Pharmacare program, medicines like Ozempic would be included on the formulary. Is that correct?
Yes, indeed.
Understood. So basically, under the government's current plan, medications to treat diabetes are not as effective as this new drug. So we're talking about partial insurance that wouldn't meet the needs of those folks living with diabetes. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. The media have talked a lot about off-label use of Ozempic, people who don't have diabetes and who just want to lose weight. Ozempic was designed for people living with diabetes. It not only brings about weight loss, which is beneficial to the diabetic state, but it also helps improve insulin release. So the underlying diabetes is improved from two angles in a kind of a virtuous cycle. So that's what makes it such a miraculous drug. Weight loss begets better diabetes control, and the drug begets better insulin supply. So that's why it's such a wonderful drug.
Thank you. And what reasons has the government given for not including this drug on the formulary? Is it the cost? What other arguments have they made, and are those arguments compelling in your opinion?
Well, to my knowledge, they haven't made any arguments. They just decided to strike it off. And you know, it's an outrage. Speaking as a treating diabetes specialist, I have several thousand people on this drug, and there's nothing quite as good. Now, there are other flavors, other manufacturers. So Novo Nordisk has Ozempic, and Eli Lilly has Mounjaro, and other companies will be coming up with better drugs in the future. So it's a competitive market. Prices are going to go down. Procurement process can get better prices for the nation, like Germany's. Then it would be a no-brainer.
Now to MP Davies, please.
Thank you. Thank you to all the witnesses for being here on such short notice. Dr. Elliott, can you give us an idea of what a typical Canadian living with diabetes might spend out of pocket each year to manage their condition today?
Thank you, Don. In type 1 diabetes, so someone like Ramya, before she had her extended medical benefits, it'd be, let's say, $8 for the sensor, $10 for the pump, $6 for insulin. So that's 18 plus 6, 24 plus a bit here and a bit there. Let's say 28. And if I multiply 28 times 365, that's $10,220. That's someone with uncomplicated type 1 diabetes, someone who doesn't have major complications. If you've got type 2 diabetes, let's say $12 to $15 per day. That's $4,400 a year. So that's if you're an overweight type 2, which 2/3 are, you need to be on Ozempic. You need to be on metformin, which is inexpensive. You need to be on one of the SGLT2 inhibitors, $3 a day. A cholesterol pill, 50 cents, 2 blood pressure pills, another $1, and maybe insulin. So that's where the $12 to $15 a day comes from.
Ms. Hosak, can you participate? Maybe you can answer some of the questions.
Sure. So I can really speak to the fact that, like, I hear stories like this from my peers all the time as well, either from high blood sugars, but also from low blood sugars. And I think that's the benefit really of the automated insulin delivery system that I spoke of, because you're alerted. Let's say you're driving, you're not able to stop and physically prick your finger to test your blood. It alerts you and it wakes you up, and it temporarily suspends your insulin, and it gives you an alert so that you know that you're going low. And sleeping is actually one of the biggest problems. So you can imagine for oneself to be terrified to go low in the middle of the night, but also for parents, we hear this quite a bit too. They're worried about their children that are running around, that are sleeping. They don't know how they're feeling. And so the hospitalization is very traumatic. It's very scary. I can tell you from my perspective, like I said, after in 2016, it took me many, many years to feel comfortable again. And I've heard of diabetics going to seizures as well. So all this stuff has a cumulative toll, I think, on the person. And of course, as we know, hospitalizations are very, very, very expensive.
Well, thank you, Ms. Hozek. So I gives me a chance to point out that as part of the Pharmacare deal negotiated by the NDP, the federal government agreed to provide $275 million per year to establish a fund to support access to the full range of diabetes devices. That's continuous glucose monitors, insulin pumps, testing strips, and syringes and needles. And the idea is that every person with diabetes in the country whose provincial government signs an agreement with the federal government will get free access to all of the devices they need. I take it you would be in support of such a program?
I would 100% be in support of such a program, but I would also ask the consideration of an automated insulin delivery system. So what's the game changer with that one is that the CGM, the Dexcom glucose, is going to talk to your pump. And so you literally have an artificial pancreas that's working for you, because when they both talk to each other, that's where the magic happens.
Yes, it's my understanding those are covered. I just want to point out that the formulary negotiated for Pharmacare includes pretty much every insulin required for type 1 diabetes. In fact, it mirrors 100% of the coverage offered in British Columbia, so that every person suffering from type or living with type 1 diabetes will be able to get the insulin they need. In terms of type 2 diabetes, it covers all of the metformins, including the combination metformins, which generally you have to try and fail before you go to semaglutides, which is the Ozempic. And the reason Ozempic is not covered is because it's only available in brand name in this country right now and is extremely expensive. About a third of BC's expenditures on type 2 diabetes are on Ozempic. And it also is a problem right now with off-label use. But it could be covered in the future. And we're well aware of the importance of semaglutide. SGLBT inhibitors and secretagogues are also covered in type 2 diabetes, as well as all the devices. So I just want to put on the record that it's a full complement of all of the medications and devices that people with diabetes, type 1 and type 2, need in Canada, save and except Ozempic, which we hope will be covered in the future, as Dr. Elliott pointed out. I just wanted to state that for the record.
Well, thank you, MP Davies, and that I'm sure is very helpful.